Anamorphic lens. What makes them so cinematic? Why are they a go-to for professional filmmakers? Well, in this video, I actually got my hands on a pair of Sirui 50mm anamorphic lens, and we're gonna talk about it. So first thing to note, the Sirui 50mm anamorphic lens does have a 1.33 times squeeze. And if you're new to anamorphic and don't know anything about anamorphic, this is what the image is going to look like on your camera if you don't have a monitor. So basically your image is just completely squeezed and honestly kind of unusable. So what you got to do is go in post-production and de-squeeze it. And when you de-squeeze it, that's when you will get your 1.33 times squeeze. Now every anamorphic lens has a different type of squeeze. Some have 1.33, some have a 1.66. Depending on the anamorphic lens that you get, your squeeze will be different. Now sometimes the reason why everybody loves anamorphic lens is because the lens flare that it gives you. It gives you a very dreamy-like, movie-like, cinematic-like lens flare in your video when facing it directly towards the sun. And sometimes it can get a little bit too much if you overdo it. Now another thing to mention about the anamorphic lens is that it does come fully manual. So if you have no experience with using manual lenses, then this will be a good learning start. You have a fully manual focus ring and you have a fully manual aperture ring. Now the focus ring on this lens is quite smooth. I honestly use better focus rings, but it's not that bad. Now when using this lens in the field and actually manually pulling focus, I did wish that I had a focus ring puller on my A7S III. It would have made my life so much easier. So now the anamorphic lens that I was given to make this video is a micro four thirds mount lens. So obviously using it on a full frame camera, there's gonna be vignetting. And this lens did have a lot of vignetting, which honestly wasn't a big issue because I can just scale in post-production. Now obviously they make an E-mount version for the Sony, but I could only get my hands on the micro four thirds. Now they do make a Sirui 50mm full frame T2.9 version, and that one is a lot bigger, and the big difference is full frame. Now since these anamorphic lenses are fully manual lens, they're also fully metal lens as well. They do have pretty good weight to them. They're not too heavy, but they're not too cheap feeling either. They're not cheap feeling at all, honestly. And the weight, I didn't really think it would bother me too much until I actually put it in my bag with all my other prime lenses and my other camera bodies and my monitors and my microphones and all my other stuff that I have in my camera bag. It did kind of weigh it down, but it wasn't nothing too crazy. I can imagine if I put more lenses in there, it probably would kill my back, but I mean, it's a full manual lens, it's good quality. Now, I never used the anamorphic lens and I never really thought that I would, only because the type of work that I do, my clients prefer the sharp look. They prefer the look of a prime lens. They don't really like the 1.33 times squeeze. They don't like all that. They just want a nice, clean, full image. So that's why I never really considered an anamorphic lens. So for me to be able to purchase this lens, it would honestly probably be used mostly more for YouTube videos and personal use. I wouldn't really use it for client work unless they want me to use it for client work. Then I'll be more than happy to use it. I do think that it is a good lens. For the price point, I actually seen some going for around $400. Now they are significantly cheaper than the T2.9 version, the full frame version. I don't see myself buying the full frame version because I don't think that I would use this lens enough for me to spend the hefty price tag that the full frame version costs. I'd rather just take the money and buy a different set of prime lens, maybe like a 35 or something. Now I did notice when editing back the footage that the anamorphic lens was a tad bit softer than my prime lenses, but that should be expected. Now, do I suggest that you pick up an anamorphic lens if you never used it? Yes and no at the same time. Yes, if you know that you have a bunch of projects that you want to use this for and that's the look that you want the lens flare, you want the creamy background, you want the nice soft edges, you want that dreamlike feel, then yes. But if you want it just to try it out, to use it here and there, maybe make a couple YouTube videos for it, I don't suggest that you buy an expensive version like the T2.9. I suggest that you get the f1.8 version like the one that I'm using now. Because again, that one is cheaper and I just couldn't find myself or give myself a good enough reason to spend over $1,000 for the full frame version, knowing that I would primarily only use this for passion projects, if that makes sense. Even if that, because I would only be buying one set, which is the 50mm. I wouldn't really buy any other set because I just don't see myself using anamorphics like that. I'd rather buy a full-on cinema lens and just get a focus puller and just use that instead, if I had to. But the anamorphic lens, it definitely is fun to use. I highly enjoyed it when I was out there filming. Now again, I don't really think that you should have a bag that is only full of primes. I really do think that you should have one lens that is completely different from them all. That one imperfect lens, that one lens that's maybe way too soft on the edges, or that one lens that just looks so distorted and dreamlike, or that one vintage lens that you're going to get from 1942, like the Helios 422 lens. I don't think everything should be sharp all the time, especially if you want to grow as a cinematographer. That's just something that I learned and advice that I got from fellow DPs and documentary artists. So the question is, do I think you should invest in one? If you have the budget and you know that you're going to use it, I say yes. Well, that's it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that you learned something. If you liked it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. A bientôt, bonne journée.